Yes.
And you can actually thank Mr. Gbadamosi this weekend.
Today, yes.
Because, October 5th is World Teachers Day.
Yes.
So, anybody out there, recognize your teachers, the good ones, great ones.
Great.
I had one for mathematics myself. I was flunking math, and he looked at me and he said, "Do you hate me?" And I said, "No, why would I hate you?" He said, "Because if you hate me, then you won't like my subject." And I'm like, "It's not about you, I just don't get it." Well, I had to do my own lesson from book 1 to book 5, did my WAEC, got, credit, but it was that math teacher that made me do what I needed to do because he cared. Until we start putting teachers who care about teaching in the classroom, it's not going to happen the way it happened for you, and it's not going to happen the way it happened for me.
So where do we find those teachers?
We won't find them until we change some things in the educational sector.
Like what?
We demean the role of a teacher. When people say, "My children will not go to a college of technology," God forbid. What is that? It means you don't think anything about teachers. And without teachers, we're nothing. Because if you're a neuroscientist, you're a physicist, you have to be taught. But you have to be taught by somebody who has a passion for it. We must compensate them better. We must reorientate them from their training. In the colleges of education, we just brought down the requirements for a teacher for getting to a college of education to 150 JAM scores. Why? Other nations put their best in the classroom. Second class upper, first class. You can't get into the teaching profession. But once you get in there, we treat you with respect. We reward you adequately. Finland, the teachers earn the same thing as you would earn if you were in like a corporate, maybe any of the telco companies or the top paying banking jobs that we have in Nigeria. The teachers would earn at that level. Right. So you want to be a teacher. It's a case of, "Oh wow, you're a teacher," not "Oh, you're a teacher." Until we change that mentality, it's not going to work.
We obviously have a convoluted problem in the education sector. It's so massive, it may be hard to single out a certain problem. We all know now that the 26% requirement from UNESCO has never been met by any other government over the 54 years that we've been independent. How do we begin to look at the sector differently and start to invest as we should?
You just use the right word, invest. Where's the money to do this investment?
We have money.
Wait, that's 95% of people have told me that. We have money. No, we don't, madam. We don't. Everybody that says we have money, we always talk about the oil and gas. That's what we say, we have money. Just to let you know, oil, which I'm sure on channels, TV shows every day, it shows how much we sell per barrel. It's about 95 to 105 per barrel every day. And we produce, or we're allowed to produce by OPEC, about 2.2 million a day. If you times this, times 30 days, you will get $6 billion. That's what you get for Nigeria, $6 billion in a month. That's what we earn from oil, and that's 80% of our foreign exchange. If you divide this by 150 million people, and we're more than that, you would get $40. That's 6,000 naira. Now, I will bet that everybody in this room spends more than that on phone in a month. And this is before we pay the people in Abuja. This is before we pay the oil companies their royalties and other miscellaneous, in quote, revenue or whatever. So the country hardly gets more than $3 billion in a month. That's about 500 billion naira. If you check the statutory allocation made in the past couple of months, it's about 620 to 640 billion naira. That's the money that's given to the federal, state, and local governments. $6 billion, madam, for a country of 150 million people is chicken change for our resources. We don't have money. We think we have money. We have the resources. Revenue-wise, we're not a rich country. Resource-wise, we're very rich. That's why the foreigners are here. The resources, they will leave us. So we're not rich. Now, within the little amount of money we have, we're hardly able or will be able to spend that much on education. Education is not a sector making money.
Permit me to come here, because coming here, there are other smaller African countries who invest way more into education, and we are way richer than these people. How do you explain that?
Exactly. This is the point I was making, that even if we are ready to do that, we're not even doing that. As rich as we are, or as poor as we are by our resources and 150 million people, we're not even doing that. So to do that, we'll have to put some money into that sector before we even start training the teachers. To train the teachers costs a lot. To get quality teachers costs a lot. To get infrastructure of education, I've not even talked about technical education, which costs a lot more. We haven't even thought of this. If those policymakers haven't thought of this after 54 years, this is our result. Now, I don't see currently, personally, those in charge taking the steps in this direction. If we are going to take the step, we'll be seeing the results by now. If you're not seeing the results, the last WIAC said about 34% passed. This is the result at 2014, 54 years after independence. So we're not moving in the right direction.
Okay. Let me ask you, Dr. Henrietta Omwebuze, in the United Kingdom some years ago, I think under Tony Blair, he was saying it's about education, and he focused on education at some point. In the United States, there's been different government who have had to look back and say it's got to be about education. At some point, it is about the economy. So different phases in the growth or the evolution of each country around the world, especially Western world, they have focused on education because they realized that something is wrong and we need to fix it. At what point do we get our government in Nigeria to focus on education? 2015 is around the corner. At what point do we get them to focus on education, and how do we do it?
Well, the last economic summit was an education summit, and I think that it's what we're stating the obvious. It's a question of interest, national interest, and what we prioritize. Asking at what point do we get them to focus on the sector may not quite be appropriate, because the time is yesterday. So the question is, can they begin to see that the future of any nation, and indeed of this country, depends on how much attention we give to teachers? She was spot on when she spoke about the fact that if we don't put the best in the classroom, we're going to keep getting worse students, which means that we won't have the people who can take this country to the next level. So that potential we've continued to speak about continues to remain a potential. So hopefully, what my hope is that the current Minister of Education will begin to see the importance of this and actually raise, well, of course, it starts with raising their salaries. Nobody wants to go into a profession where they're bound to be poor.
Right.
And so that's the reason why the best will never think of becoming teachers.
Okay.
Because at the Lagos Business School, I have participants walk up to me and say, I'd like to be like, because they like what they see. So they want to be like us. So it's not that people don't want to teach. People do want to teach, but they see that most teachers are poor.
Well, we don't want a situation where it has to start with, what do they call it, a demonstration and eventually downing of tools and not working before we see that change. Because it looks like every time there's a need for a change in the education sectors, the teachers have to down tools to make their point to government. Why does it have to be that way, and why can't we do it in a more strategic way?
Well, yeah, you speak my mind. I'm afraid that's a question I can't answer, because, as I said, it's obvious, it should be clear. Korea had a strategic plan for moving the nation forward, and so they had a 5-year plan. They got the brightest in their country. They had national exams, and got the brightest whom they sent to the US to study specific areas where they believed they needed to move forward, computing especially. And these students came back and were trained. Indeed, and while they sent students out, they also brought Americans in with a clear contract to transfer expertise over 5 years.
Right.
After